Coming up on One Detroit, we are less than a week away from Election Day. Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson talks integrity of elections, when we'll see results, and defending her ban on open carry at the polls that was just blocked. Plus, Nolan Finley and Stephen Henderson on the key Michigan races and what to watch November 3rd. Then the old popular vote versus Electoral College debate could start again. And do you trust the polls you see? The insight behind the numbers with Epic MRA pollster Bernie Porn. It is all right now on One Detroit.
From Delta Faucets to Behr Paint, Masco Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. Masco, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
Support for this program provided by the Cynthia and Etzel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV.
The Kresge Foundation. Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan.
The DTE Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public TV, among the state's largest foundations committed to Michigan-focused giving. We support organizations that are doing exceptional work in our state. Visit dtefoundation.com to learn more.
Business Leaders for Michigan, dedicated to making Michigan a top 10 state for jobs, personal income, and a healthy economy. Nissan Foundation, Ally, and viewers like you.
Hey One Detroit, I'm Christy McDonald. Welcome to the show. We are less than a week away from the election. COVID cases are on the rise here in Michigan. There is record absentee voting turnout in the state. The political ads are crowding every commercial break, and it all culminates next Tuesday. We've got you covered heading into Election Day. Coming up, Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson on the integrity of the election, last-minute voting logistics, and defending her ban on open carry at the polls. Plus, Nolan Finley and Stephen Henderson on the biggest races in Michigan and what to watch for on Tuesday night. Then popular vote versus Electoral College. Is it time for a change in the system? And reading the polls, what's behind the numbers and how accurate are they? Pollster Bernie Porn from Epic MRA brings us up to speed. It is all ahead on the show. And we're starting off with my conversation with Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. She has been working for months with clerks across the state to get ready for the election. Just this week, her ban on open carry at the polls was blocked by a judge. It's being appealed by the Attorney General. And while that is playing out, she is adamant that the polls will be safe and clerks will be ready.
We're seeing record numbers of people voting and the urgency to ensure everyone who has not yet voted, and 2 million citizens already have, but all of those who haven't, making sure they know what they need to know to get their ballots, return their ballots. If they choose to vote in person on Election Day, what to expect then.
What are some of the conversations that you're having with other secretaries of state around the country, just in terms of the importance of making sure that everything is right this election cycle, especially because of a lot of the feelings that are out there, a lot of the misinformation that is out there about the integrity of the election?
Well, yeah, it's exactly right. I mean, a lot of our conversations are about specifically that. We're doing so much work, both behind the scenes and have done with our local clerks for months, and we're ready to go. And so really the conversations are, how do we make sure voters have faith in their process? How do we fight back against any misperceptions that threaten the integrity of the process? How do we prepare for candidates saying things that maybe aren't true about the process? And so it's really a bipartisan collaborative effort among us all secretaries of state, because so many of us are dealing with the same misinformation, challenges of perceptions, and all the rest.
So before we talk about safety of voting and also really the timeliness of the results, I want to talk about the absentee and the number of absentee voters that we've seen here in Michigan. And if people still, this week before the election, what are you seeing and what should people still do if they have their ballot?
Well, if you have your ballot, you can return it in person at your local clerk's office or to your local drop box prior to 8 p.m. on Election Day, and it will count. You can also track it to ensure it's been received at michigan.gov/vote, and also get a location of your local clerk and local drop boxes at that same website. If you don't have a ballot, you can still vote early. You just have to go to your clerk's office really at this point to get that ballot, to apply to have it, and then you can fill it out and return it right then and there.
Explain the process of when the clerks get to start to prepare those absentee ballots and start to count them.
Well, and 7 a.m. on election day, there will be groups of election workers all across the state in every community coming together. They'll be sequestered until the polls close at 8 p.m., tabulating ballots throughout the day and ultimately getting ready for us to report our results as soon as possible. And so they've already been trained. They're ready to go. We've got double and sometimes some places triple the number of machines to tabulate ballots than we had even back in August. So we've really built an infrastructure that's ready for these millions of absentee ballots to be processed and tabulated as efficiently as possible.
You did recently ban open carry in polling places, and there is now a lawsuit challenging that I think that we'll be seeing playing out this week. Explain to voters what the legal precedent was for you to come out and ban open carry.
Well, I'm the chief election officer for the state of Michigan, and in that regard, my authority is well grounded in Michigan law to supervise our elections, to protect particularly the sanctity of the polling place. We train poll workers, we set other expectations and regulations and guidelines. It's also not okay to take photos of other voters, for example, at the polls. So that guidance, those directives that we issue to clerks are designed to ensure the law is followed. And in this case, the law is a ban on voter intimidation. We will not stand or tolerate any voter intimidation, threats, or harassment on election day. And we need to define for our clerks, for our local election workers, exactly what that means in our view, in my view, and in the view of the Attorney General and the Michigan State Police. The brandishing of firearms in a polling place would amount to that type of threat or intimidation.
After you came out with this ban, though, we started to hear from law enforcement, some local law enforcement saying, well, we're not going to be enforcing this ban. And that then gives concern among voters and the people who are working at the polling places. And I want to read you a quote from the Lapeer County Sheriff, Scott McKenna, who came out this weekend and said, "You just created a problem. All you did was throw gasoline on a fire and create a storm that didn't need to exist," saying that this ban just adds confusion. What's your response to that?
It's actually exactly the opposite. The guidance actually provides clarity to clerks about what to do. You call those who take an oath to protect you and voters, and let them know this intimidation is happening at the polls. And I'm proud that the Michigan State Police, as well as the majority of local law enforcement all across the state, recognizes that and that this is a furtherance of their duty to protect people. Now, unfortunately, we're in a moment, particularly this close to a nationwide election, where things become politicized. But we're also in a moment where there are threats and violence and hateful rhetoric increasing in our state, as we've seen in recent weeks. So we've got to take all that into account and recognize that my job is just to protect the vote, protect our voters, protect the sanctity of those polling places on election day, which is what this guidance is furthering.
Talk about the timeliness of results. When can we expect to see results in Michigan?
We will start to see soon after the polls close, some results being announced, but of course, the full tabulation of every ballot is going to take some time. And so from the moment the polls close until we have that full unofficial tabulation, which may take a few days because we'll have millions of ballots to go through and tabulate securely, we're going to do our best. I'm going to do my best to tell the public exactly where we are in the process so that we both ensure accuracy and transparency, but we also want to avoid a scenario where in any race, you see this back and forth of who's won, who hasn't, and that really creates a sense of uncertainty or confusion among and really lack of faith in the results themselves.
Well, it is no secret our One Detroit contributors, Nolan Finley, the editorial page editor of the Detroit News, and Stephen Henderson, host of American Black Journal, are on the opposite sides of the political spectrum. But their analysis of all things politics has taken us through years of elections in Michigan and now another presidential race. They met up to talk about the biggest races in Michigan and what we should watch for on Tuesday.
What has your attention as we get closer?
Well, Steve, it seems like this campaign, in Michigan at least, is playing out in two different universes. The candidates are still swarming the state. They are campaigning here as if it were a dead heat. But if you look at our polls, we had the Detroit News WDIV poll out Wednesday that showed a 7.7% lead for Biden here. That has been consistent now for the last several polls. Despite all this campaign, despite all this spending, it has not moved. It still ranges between 7 and 9% in Biden's favor. And yet these candidates are all over Michigan.
You know, even the internal polls in both campaigns show that the president has been flat for a while, and Biden continues to kind of to kind of inch up.
Trump put $2 million in this week in a new ad buy, $100,000 in a new radio buy. They're still grabbing whatever they can.
I think they're trying to stop the bleeding in states where they think that if you get beat too badly, it has an effect down ticket. And they're trying to hold on to the hope that they could get John James elected to the Senate seat that Gary Peters sits in. If they can't do that, I think it complicates their strategy for keeping a majority in the Senate because they've got problems elsewhere. I think that explains some of what we're seeing. If you're Trump, you got to win one of the 3 states you picked off last time, in addition to keeping everything else you had. So why not Michigan?
I wrote today that the Trump campaign believes they've got another Hail Mary in them here, where Democrats put their resources into mail-in balloting and early voting. Republicans have gone heavy on this get out the vote campaign, and they feel like they've got a good effort going and that they could surprise again on Tuesday.
You and I don't agree on a lot of things right now about where the country is or where we're headed. I'm worried about Tuesday and Wednesday and into December. The damage that has been done to our ability to govern together. If Democrats win the presidency and the Senate, there's going to be a real instinct to take revenge on the Republican Party for what it's done, not just over the last 4 years, but over the last 20 years. But that doesn't necessarily get us to a better place in terms of being able to govern the country. And I think the worry is that we're in this seesaw political moment where, somebody's got all the marbles and they're going to do what they want to do. And then the other side gets all the marbles and does what they want to do.
The Republicans are looking at what Democrats did to Donald Trump in terms of not working with him for 1 minute during these 4 years. And they're going to say they're going to dig in and do the same thing. Now, if Democrats get control of the Senate, which
it won't matter.
A very good chance they can do what they want, but just as they did in 2008. But taking that approach where we've got this big agenda for reshaping America, and we're going to push it through because we have the Senate and the White House and the House, they can do that. But that doesn't serve the purpose of uniting this country. And Joe Biden's been out there saying, I'm going to be the president for both Republicans and Democrats, all of America. But if you get in office and you're just going to swap one ideologically driven agenda for another, it is not going to serve the purpose of uniting us. There's going to be backlash, bitterness, pushback.
I care less about unity than I do about governability. We should be distant on some of these issues. There are fundamental issues that we just disagree about, and there are fundamental issues that need addressing in this country that I don't think anyone should back down about. But we do also need to be able to govern the country. That we have big problems that affect us all, that we need common solutions to that are not just going to get undone the next time the other party gets control. And I think this is headed towards something worse at this point than something better.
I would agree. But if we don't start governing from the middle, and if we don't start electing politicians who commit to governing for the middle, we are not going to come together as a country.
Well, I mean, Joe Biden's a great example of that, though. I mean, you saw the primary. This was the centrist candidate among the Democrats. That is center-left politics. What he's espousing, it shouldn't be as much of a threat to Republicans as it is.
Nothing about what Joe Biden is standing on right now is center left. I mean, he has embraced the far left Democratic wish list, pulling back tax and regulatory reforms. This whole
asking people to pay taxes is radical.
Assault on fossil fuels. Well, and you look at that centrist. I would look at that as far left, and I think
that's part of the problem, right?
We've got to come someplace in the middle. But we are out of time, Steve.
Yeah, we are, and we're almost out of time in terms of the election too. 5 more days. I can't wait till it's over.
We'll be back next week. Hopefully, we'll know by next Thursday who won this thing.
Noah and Stephen will be back next week, and the 3 of us will analyze the aftermath. Well, it seems every presidential election, the question of the Electoral College versus the popular vote comes up. Earlier this year, we took a look at one organization looking to change how we choose the president. One Detroit senior producer, Bill Kubota, has the story.
Thank you so much.
It's heard so often. Hillary Clinton got 3 million more votes than Donald Trump. She should be president. But for the Electoral College.
The Electoral College sucks and should be abolished.
Donald J. Trump received 16 electoral votes from the state of Michigan.
Here's Michigan's Electoral College in Lansing, 2016. These collegians represent all 4.8 million voters in the state, half who didn't vote for Trump. Let's turn on the Wayback Machine to see President Benjamin Harrison win the Electoral College, but not the popular vote. In 1888. 112 years later,
I, George Walker Bush, do solemnly swear.
The year 2000. Another candidate loses the popular vote and still takes office. A fluke. It can't happen again, right?
I've just received a call from Secretary Clinton.
Some want to get rid of the Electoral College and go to a straight popular vote. But the Electoral College is etched in the Constitution. Hold on, there's another way. One that keeps the Electoral College but ensures the candidate with the most popular votes really wins. Something called the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. The idea is to preserve the Electoral College, that is, to retain the state's rights to do elections their own way, like going with the national popular vote.
And my initial reaction was, it sounds like a communist plot to make Al Gore president. I said, what a stupid idea. Why would we ever want to do that?
Saul Anuzis has been a prominent Michigan Republican for years. Now he's working for the national popular vote.
You know, I've actually read the book that was about 900 pages long and said, this is a brilliant idea.
2008. Obama v. McCain. Both candidates campaigned in Michigan, spent money here. We were a battleground state until a poll came out putting McCain 12 points back.
So the McCain campaign and the National Party determined we can't win in Michigan. And so they pulled out all their resources, pulled out all their people, pulled out all the money, and shipped it all to Ohio and Florida. And I sat there and said, what a crazy system we have where Michigan is relevant one day and not relevant the other.
Anuzis says at least 40 states aren't relevant during presidential campaigns. It's predetermined. States like California and New York go Democratic. States like Idaho and Oklahoma, Republican. Their electoral votes don't change.
And that means there's only 10 potential battleground states. And as the race develops, it usually goes down to anywhere from 3 to 6 battleground states. So we end up spending 95% of all the resources, 95% of all the presidential visits are spent in those 3 to 6 battleground states. So it perverts public policy and it perverts politics.
States joined the compact agreeing to hand over their electoral votes to the candidate that wins the national popular vote, whoever that might be.
What the national popular vote does is equalize the system, because every voter in every state now becomes politically relevant every time. And one voter here is the same as one voter anywhere else.
15 states and the District of Columbia have signed on. Here it passed the Michigan House a few years ago, but went no further. So far, most of the states joining the compact lean Democratic, as do compact supporters.
Because you and Elizabeth Warren and Pete Buttigieg and George Soros' kids are all on the same side. So why did a good Republican from Michigan decide to throw in with all those characters?
Anuzis, he's been taking some hits because of who he's been working with.
Just because there's a bunch of liberals backing it, you think it's a bad idea?
So you actually think people are going to campaign in any more states because of your plan?
Yeah,
I don't think anyone's understanding your distinction.
Well,
the Electoral College will be meaningless under your and it will
not. That's not true.
For the compact to work, it needs more states to sign on, a total of 270 electoral votes, the number needed to win the Electoral College. The compact has 196 electoral votes so far.
We got problems, folks.
Some poll watchers say recent history could repeat itself yet again, with Trump losing the popular vote by even more while winning the Electoral College. But if the compact were in place, Anuzis says, his man Trump would still win. Trump would just go more places and get more voters. Voters that haven't turned out because they've been in states where the Electoral College has always gone to the Democrats.
The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer.
The national popular vote seems unlikely this election cycle, but Anuzis keeps looking ahead.
More realistically, I think by 2024, we will be running the presidential campaign under a national popular vote.
We recently checked in with Solanuzas, who said the commission didn't gain a lot of steam, but just wait to see what happens after November 3rd. All right, so your phone might be ringing a lot these next few days as pollsters get their last round of data. One Detroit associate producer Will Glover talked with longtime Michigan pollster Bernie Porn, president of Epic MRA, for what he's seeing this election.
What is polling in its most basic form?
Well, there are all different kinds of polling. You have online polling, automated polling where robocalls are made, and then people will press their phone button to respond to the polls. And then you have live interviewer polling, which is most of what we do, and to make sure that we get an adequate representation of younger voters, we have continued to increase the percentage of cell phone only contacts that we make in our polls.
What are some of the more general ways polls are used, and how might people encounter them in their everyday lives when there isn't an election cycle?
Most of our polls are done for school districts, community colleges, and transit authorities, and quite often it will be to test potential ballot proposals or to just do satisfaction surveys to find out, for example, for a transit authority, why do people ride the bus? And with the pandemic, COVID-19, have they been less likely to ride the bus because of the fear of catching COVID-19? And if it is resolved, will they be more likely to go back and ride the bus? Because a lot of people are no longer riding the bus because of fear. And you have a high percentage of people in Michigan who are extremely fearful of catching COVID-19. And when we ask about mask wearing, you have a very high percentage of African Americans and Detroiters who say they wear their mask. Interestingly, when we ask that question, you have almost 100% of Democrats saying they wear a mask. About 12% of independent voters say that they sometimes don't wear a mask. But you have 28% of Republicans and Trump voters saying they don't wear a mask, including 32% of male voters, Trump supporters, who do not wear a mask. So if he would simply wear a mask and encourage his supporters to wear a mask, that would resolve an awful lot of the problems, at least in Michigan.
What have been the most interesting findings that you've seen in some of the recent polling that you've done?
Interestingly, to give you an idea of how the presidential election might turn out, of those who are undecided in the presidential election, 76% support a national mask policy. So while President Trump is talking about, well, there's two sides of the mask issue, well, not among those folks who are undecided in Michigan. The other thing that I found was extremely interesting and somewhat disappointing is when I saw tremendous support after the Floyd death for Black Lives Matter. And I mean, nationally, polls showed as much as 70% support of Black Lives Matter. When the message came out in support of defunding the police, there was a lot of confusion about that. And that has had I think, a significant impact on the perception of Black Lives Matter because it's viewed as supporting defunding the police. And 57% of Michigan voters do not support or oppose defunding the police. And that's even when we tell them that it would not eliminate police, it would just reprioritize some of the spending so that healthcare and psychologists are provided to deal with those people who need specific kinds of assistance. And you look at that, and you have 48% support of Black Lives Matters now, and 45% opposed, overwhelming opposition among Republicans, and significant opposition by more than the statewide numbers among independent voters, and overwhelming support among Democrats. However, if you phrase the need for police reform and the need for reform of education and how systemic racism affects African Americans in a variety of different avenues. When you deal it that way, 75% of Michigan voters think systemic racism is a problem. So if you describe it in that way and talk about, as part of it, we need to address those times when police go over the line, and make sure that we address that, as well as all of the other issues that are involved in systemic racism in our country and in our state. And when you do that, and I would note that recently Joe Biden has been talking about addressing systemic racism, and he's not been referring as much to Black Lives Matter, and that is unfortunate, but that is a result of the messaging about defunding the police.
For all things election 2020, just head to onedetroitpbs.org, follow us on social media, and make sure you check in with the PBS NewsHour on election night. Then meet us back here next Thursday for analysis of the results and so much more. Hang in there, Michigan. Only a few more days. I'm Christy McDonald. We'll see you next time on One Detroit.
You can find more at onedetroitpbs.org or subscribe to our social media channels and sign up for our One Detroit newsletter.
From Delta Faucets to Behr Paint, Masco Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. Masco, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
Support for this program provided by the Cynthia and Etzel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV.
The Kresge Foundation. Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan.
The DTE Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public TV, among the state's largest foundations committed to Michigan-focused giving. We support organizations that are doing exceptional work in our state. Visit dtefoundation.com to learn more.
Business Leaders for Michigan, dedicated to making Michigan a top 10 state for jobs, personal income, and a healthy economy. Nissan Foundation. Ally. And viewers like you.